Alright guys, topic 12, looking at America here going in the 80s and 90s. Political ideology here, talking a little bit about the Republicans and Democrats, liberal and conservatives. The liberals and Democrats are going to go hand in hand here, and then you've got the conservative Republicans are going to go hand in hand. If you know one, you kind of know the other a little bit because they're kind of opposites of each other. Liberals tend to believe in more government regulation of the economy. Government's going to be more involved. They've got to help stimulate things, whereas Republicans want to give more personal freedom to the people, and that the government should not be involved in the economy very much because that will probably cause issues. Social programs are a little bit more favorable to the liberals, whereas the concern for conservatives is that social programs can lead to dependence and abuse of those programs by people that don't really deserve to be on them. They're expensive, etc. You will see more laws to promote minorities, equality for women, stuff like that from the liberals. Whereas conservatives say let's leave that sort of thing more up to the individual states or maybe the people themselves because too much government limits freedom. So you see them also favor state and local government decisions or individual decisions because they have a generally negative view of the federal government as a whole when you look at the big picture. Whereas the Democrats and liberals tend to believe a little bit more in things like the UN, big governing bodies and organizations, in this case the world, the UN, and also favor working on with other countries. A little bit more positive with the federal government. Don't forget the conservatives here in particular. Guys like Reagan, for instance, are going to have a pretty hard line stance against communism. So there's a few things here that help conservatism rise. There's the criticism of liberalism. This is kind of a reaction to kind of the hippies of the 60s and 70s. Things like stagflation under various presidents, the welfare system, etc., busing, saying that hey, look, a lot of our problems they're created by this whole we've got to help everyone mindset, or we've got to integrate, blah blah blah. This stuff is expensive. And this is the concept of Nixon's silent majority just a little bit here, and that these are the people that make up the majority of America, but they're kind of quiet about things, and here they kind of are making a resurgence, you could say. When you add that in with demographic patterns, there is some shifting of where people are living. People are moving more to the suburbs, less more out of the cities. You're seeing migrations in general. People are going to the southwest. They are moving out of cities. And you're also going to see a realignment. Traditionally Democratic South, the beliefs and views, which have always been considered Democratic, are going to now realign to the Republican Party just a little bit. And you can flip that a little bit with the Republicans of, say, 100 years ago to the Democrats of more modern days. The other thing that kind of pops up here a little bit is there's the concern by conservatives that affirmative action programs, which seek to give women, minorities, etc., a fair shake to jobs, education, etc., a little bit of reverse racism in the sense of it discriminates against primarily white males. So that'd be a conservative criticism here of affirmative action. Combine those two things with the religious right here, with these televangelists there, you can read their names. The moral majority here, this is really going to focus on things like, let's be Christian, let's have family values, prayer back in school, do the right thing. These quote unquote traditional values are going to be more Republican. Abortion, homosexuality, drugs, stuff of that nature is going to be things that they're against. You add that in, and you have put a guy like eventual President Reagan into it, you're going to be able to be pretty successful here and have a conservative president win the 80s. So nice things about Reagan that he's charismatic. He knows how to say, what to say, etc. He's a generally likable person that always makes him more popular, and he has simple, effective messages, leading to the 1980 election when he runs against Carter and soundly defeats him. Reagan ends up saying stuff like, "Hey, America, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" Kind of asking them to evaluate their time under Carter's presidency. If the answer is no, you should vote for me, is what he's saying in effect. If the answer is yes, well, that's great. But so it's a very simple and effective message. People can easily evaluate their experiences under Carter, and many of them are going to come to unfavorable conclusions, thus supporting Reagan. So Reagan kind of believes that too much government is the issue. Um, with that, Reagan's going to come up with his idea of Reaganomics, supply side economics. Um, you are going to see him have the concept of that you should cut taxes for the wealthy, like with the Economic Recovery Act, cut taxes for the wealthy, and that'll create a kind of a trickle down effect here a little bit. You are going to reduce government spending, regulation, the rules and stuff like that. With that in mind, you're also going to be controlling the money supply with inflation. You're also going to really just cut the size of the government here a little bit. Um, and so that's kind of Reaganomics there. So it's trickle down. You cut taxes to the rich, they'll use that money, invest it, create more businesses, jobs, etc. It'll trickle down, and everything there. Early struggles, though, there's gonna be some issues. The First of all, the economy is actually going to get worse into a recession. Unemployment's up. Working class gets hit. The debt doesn't actually grow, but it doesn't shrink either, and the budget is not balanced. We are still spending more than we bring in. That's not good. But after a couple of years of Reaganomics, you do see a little progress. You can thank the tax cuts, and part of that it does actually work a little bit. Um, Stagflation does end, and unemployment does go down. But the problem is with this situation, even if it does work to some degree, the wealth gap increases, the rich get richer, and the poor get poorer. So, with the budget deficit, national debt here, the growth of the economy that's happening under Reagan is not more than the tax cuts. So Reagan cuts the taxes, and we lose a bunch of money because people are no longer paying as much in taxes. Even though that caused the economy to grow, the economy growth is much less than the amount of taxes that we've lost. So in order to make that difference up, Reagan's like, "Hey, Congress, we should cut some social programs." Probably not going to be the best thing he's ever done. You've also got, deregulation causing some issues with the banks to fail. They'll need bailed out. There's also a trade imbalance with Japan. We are buying more from them than we are selling, so that's a bit of a problem as well. Reagan's going to be attempted assassination by John Hinckley Jr., kind of has a creepy, weird obsession with Jodie Foster there. This will lead to some things down the road. He does survive, though, and goes on to win the election of 1984, and some of the things he will do furthermore is then kind of create a more conservative Supreme Court, which will then allow the Supreme Court justices to rule on major landmark cases. For example, a Roe v. Wade here, with the first Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, that's a woman. With things like Roe v. Wade, they were passed under a more liberal court in years past, but you could argue that under the more conservative court under Reagan, they probably would not have been passed. So this is kind of a big deal as far as the influence of new conservative justices like Sandra Day O'Connor. The material culture and the yuppies, fitness and space. These are some things here in the 80s. It's all about the things. It's all about the haircuts, the style, etc. And then you got the Challenger explosion that happens. That's on national TV. That's definitely not good. So the interest in the space, not a space race per se, but this is still going on. And then it explodes, and that puts a bit of a damper on everything. You've also got the crack cocaine and AIDS issues. Reagan and Clinton too a little bit. Reagan and Bush, they're going to put big crackdowns on, harsher sentences, longer sentences. People are going to be in prison a lot more because of the sentences, although there will be an effect of, less people doing drugs because, well, they're in prison. So that's kind of what we're looking at here, the crack cocaine issue, trying to cut that flow of drugs into the U.S. and stop the people that do have them in the U.S. There's also the AIDS issue that goes on, a bit of an epidemic in the 80s. Reagan pretty quiet about it, so kind of suggests like he doesn't care, etc. Peace through strength comes about, and this is Reagan's overall goal to weaken the Soviet Union and support anti-communist governments. He wants to build up the military to kind of show off how strong we are. We will make the Soviet Union back down because we'll see how strong we are. His Strategic Defense Initiative, aka SDI, is going to happen. System to shoot down missiles from like the Soviet Union with lasers and rockets. Spends a ton of money, and it really doesn't have anything to show for it. There's also things going on in Nicaragua, Grenada, trying to support the Contras in Nicaragua, etc. Trying to basically just find a way to tear down the Soviet Union through preventing them from spreading their ideologies and so forth. We'll come back to the Contras in a little bit. Things going on in the Middle East. You've got the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan with the Mujahideen. These are the Afghan rebels that the U.S. is going to support. Soviets are going to try and support a communist government while the U.S. is supporting the rebels, the Mujahideen, who are not communists. Soviet Union withdrawals kind of lessens their power and influence. Lebanon, you've got a bunch of Marines in there that are trying to have the Civil War just kind of chill out. They get killed in a terrorist attack, which then the U.S. decides, hey, we better get out of here. It's not worth our time. Libya, there's terrorist attacks in Berlin that are carried out. And Muammar Gaddafi, the leader of Libya, is kind of accused of either giving the terrorists safe haven or planning them even. So we bomb Libya. Iran and Iraq, there's an arms embargo when Iraq invades Iran. We're not supposed to sell weapons to Iran, and we support Iraq here, so this will come back up here in just a little bit. So as we go through these pictures here, we get to the Iran-Contra affair. Some majorly illegal stuff going on here with the United States. Reagan administration does two things. They sell weapons to Iran, trying to get some U.S. hostages released in different parts of the world. That is very much illegal due to the embargo that was put in place, step one. Money to the Contras, the money that's used to buy and sell the weapons from Iran, that is sent to the Contras, which the Congress had passed a law earlier making that very much illegal. So that is two things that they've done. You get a lot of people indicted and put on trial for this. A lot of them don't, it doesn't hold very well. Oliver North, you can see in the right hand there side there. He's the one that's allegedly done all this. He takes the heat for it. Reagan doesn't really get anything to come out of this, even though he probably should have in a sense if he actually knows about it, because he's like, look, I didn't know about this. They did this behind my back, and Oliver North kind of supports that idea, giving him, kind of the nickname of the Teflon president. It's nothing's gonna stick to him, because what the president doesn't know can't hurt him. So that's kind of the Iran-Contra affair. Then you got the evil empire here with Reagan telling Gorbachev, leader of the Soviet Union, to tear down the wall. You've got perestroika and glasnost. Add elements of capitalism and democracy because the Soviet Union has been falling behind technologically and economically. And glasnost for the people. Let the people know what's going on with the Russian government a little bit more. These policies under Gorbachev are probably, if not exclusively, definitely play a factor in the destruction of the Soviet Union as it's been known. And then the symbolism here with the Berlin Wall. Berlin Wall is going to fall when the East German government falls, and several other communist governments are going to fall as well. And in 1991, the Soviet Union is going to fall as well. Gorbachev tried to be overthrown, didn't work out. Hardliners, traditional communists, going to be anti-Gorbachev here. And now the Soviet Union dissolves, and all the countries under it were now independent. President Bush, the first one, gets elected, kind of riding the wave of popularity for Reagan here. He's got an impressive resume, and he has this new world order idea, and that the U.S. should kind of govern and lead because we are the only remaining superpower. We have a lot of power and influence, so we should be a leader in the world. Under Bush, we got a lot going on. Panama, he has Manuel Noriega, the leader, arrested, trying to stop drugs from coming into the U.S. There's democracy starting a little bit in China, although it is repressed too. Nelson Mandela, political prisoner, he ends up wanting apartheid to end and gets elected as the first black South African president. Apartheid, remember, is just like segregation for the most part, just in South Africa here. Persian Gulf War, you've got Saddam Hussein here a little bit. He wants some oil because it will give him more power and influence. So he invades Kuwait. This is not going to be good because the U.S. can't allow this. We don't want the power and influence to spread. So the U.S. forms a coalition to get support from other UN-based countries. An Operation Desert Storm led by General Colin Powell, where we bomb and basically take out the Iraqi army in about 4 days. Significant forces there lost by Iraqi and the Kuwaitis, whereas the U.S. and coalition forces, very few die comparatively. Burning the oil fields on their way out, the Iraqis are doing that. So if we can't have it, you can't. Do relieve Saddam Hussein in power, which is kind of questionable because he does end up hurting a lot of people. Eventually, though, President Clinton is going to win here, or eventual President Clinton. Keep in mind, Ross Perot, a guy who runs as kind of an independent, he gets nearly 20% of the vote, which is a very big number as an independent. So Clinton is going to get elected here in large part because Bush loses out on his popularity a little bit, where he's like, hey, read my lips, not going to give you guys any more taxes, no new taxes. And what's he do shortly into his presidency? Puts more taxes in place. So people like the idea of Clinton here, that he's a little, he's going to be able to do things that Bush was not.